Seth has brought this up to me a couple of times of basically, hey, we need more training on working with buyers, especially when listings aren't moving as fast. It's like, hey, we need more buyer training. We need more buyer training. So appreciate you, Seth, for kind of driving that point home. Ashley Callahan here, Scott here, they've both worked with a million buyers over the years. They really know how to work with buyers. I'm going to turn over the floor to them. But I will say that I think that part of what we do should, and Scott and Ashley, feel free to totally overrule me on any of this. But I feel like what we do and the way we do it should be worked into, at least, if nothing else, a very serious buyer conversation if you want to keep them loyal. I feel like just how the market has changed, how we market listings and how we list homes and all that, I feel like that's also changed with how buyers shop. And that should be part of it, where we have a conversation at the very least. And Scott and Ashley might totally overrule me on this, and they are the authority for sure. But to say that, hey, you know what, you have access to listings just about as fast as I do. You're not hiring me because I'm a gatekeeper of information. You're hiring me because I'm really good. And I'm really good because, believe it or not, what makes me a good buyer's agent is I list more homes than everybody, so I know the market better. I have my finger on the pulse of the market better than a typical, Zillow buyer's agent. And Scott and Ashley might totally disagree with me on that, but I do believe I think that's true. And I think that's at the very least part of a conversation that should be had. So take it away, guys.
Okay. Ashley, you want me to go first?
That's fine.
Okay. A little bit about myself, who doesn't know who I am. I joined real estate world as a showing agent that got turned into a buyer's agent. So I usually don't like talking about the past as much, but I am the agent I am today because of the job I was at previous brokerage. So that being said, I think before I joined 1% List, I've had my hands in probably over 500 buyer transactions. And every single one of those buyer transactions was I would say about 95% was done the same way of how we got the buyer, how we kept the buyer, and how we finished with the buyer. And that is through buyer consultations, buyer agreements, meaning the team lead, and Ashley's going to smile and laugh at me, is we had to get those things signed. And they were signed. And if you didn't get them signed, it wasn't good. So I think I had like I said, about 95% of the buyers that I worked with had a buyer rep agreement signed, sealed, delivered, with the client that I had. That being said, this job, I would say, has 1% List life has kind of made me lazy on the buyer side, meaning I kind of take it for granted how we had to kind of go through the process of dealing with buyers. But now the market is trending now into a stabilized normal market where you actually have time to convert a buyer from your listing. You have time to talk with the buyer. And more importantly, you need to talk with buyers these days because you're going to be running ragged. And if you don't know what they want, how they want it, when they want it, there's no point in going to show any of them houses. Whereas we couldn't really do that the last few years because you didn't have time to have a conversation with a buyer because the house is already on the market. So meaning when I talk with these buyers, I had an hour-long buyer consult before we saw any houses. And y'all might think that's crazy, but literally my first meeting with them was a face-to-face buyer consultation to figure out what they wanted, when they wanted. So we only needed to go see 3 or 4 houses. And that's all we did. Yes, Grant.
I got a question, not to interrupt you. My question is this. So I've only ever had one person in my life sign a buyer rep agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, it was one of my really good friends, but it was because I could not trust his dad. And his dad was trying to interfere with the relationship. That's the only time I've ever had anybody sign a buyer rep. So my question to you would be this. Do you think that the buyer rep actual document, and I don't know, I would love an answer from Ashley and Scott on this. Do you think the most important thing is the buyer rep agreement? Or do you think the buyer rep agreement, you getting that signature, forced you to have the real conversation with your client, and that was what was so important?
The buyer rep agreement means absolutely nothing. to me in the real estate world. Now, that buyer rep agreement to the client.
Hey, would you define a buyer rep agreement really quick, just in case anybody
So a buyer rep agreement is that they're working exclusively with you to buy their house. Meaning,
if they don't use you, they owe you a commission, basically.
If you write it on the piece of paper, if you don't use me, you will have to pay this commission. So it's pretty much a listing contract, with no really authority, really, because deep down they can go use whoever they want, but they kind of don't know that in theory. I'm not lying to them, but the buyer rep agreement, why it was important, was I'm sitting down in front of you face to face, and you're agreeing to sign a piece of paper and trusting me that I'm your agent. So we're already going off. We're leaving that meeting as you trust me. You're in contract with me. You said yes to me that I'm going to go find your house, meaning that you're not going to go drive around. And look, I'm going back to my little lines here. I'm like, and we even said this. This means that if you're driving around, you see a house on 123 Main Street, or you look up a house on Zillow or Realtor.com, instead of calling that agent, you call me.
Ashley, do you agree with everything being said here?
Basically. So I think part of that entire meeting is the whole point of it is to get their criteria for a house. Like, it's an in-depth face-to-face meeting so that you're meeting them for the first time in a safe environment, not randomly at a house. You find out their criteria for what they want for a house so you can go find it, and then you explain how you work and like your expectations of them and their expectations of you. And it's kind of like that meeting ground. I don't think the document is worth anything that it's printed on, like legality wise, but it does help explain how we get paid, exclusivity, like why, and just, I guess, all those conversations that you want to have on the front end and not after the fact and get burned.
One more question.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that it would be beneficial, like if corporate put out a training video teaching people how to talk to buyers, and if we put out a document that would kind of address all the buyer's wants and needs in a house?
Yeah.
And then rather than having, because I don't know about y'all, even if somebody totally is disloyal to me and buys a house without me after signing the agreement, it's not good business for me to sue a client and say, you got to pay me money. Like,
right.
I'm never doing that. I've never done that. I never will. So to that end, maybe we just have a short and sweet document that's basically like our promise to you and your promise to us.
We have it.
It's just a one document. You have it. You have that.
So I'm sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
Okay. Mine is kind of already written that way. Like, I printed what I use because I wasn't sure the format of this, which I can attach. It's basically 4 sheets that I go through when I do this. And I think I already uploaded my loyalty agreement with the group before, but it already does that. It just talks about my job duties, my expectations of them, and then how I get paid, which is part of that conversation. Like, hey, you don't ever owe me a commission. The seller pays my commission. The only time commission really comes up is if you find a for sale by owner house. So if you're looking on Zillow, Realtor.com, driving around town, you're not seeing something that I sent you, it's either not listed in the MLS or it doesn't fit your criteria. But hey, if you want to go see it, text me a picture of the address. I'll negotiate my commission directly with the seller. They'll pay me. If they don't, then you would owe me a commission. Or, hey, I would appreciate you sending me like 2 or 3 referrals over the course of the next year, and we're square. And they're good. They understand that, and it's all out for them.
So we really need a 4-part thing.
Well, what I meant, we have it is when I first joined, we kind of took the buyer consultation that I used and we put our 1% stuff on it. So we have it in .loop or somewhere in the 1% cloud somewhere. We have that same buyer consultation, that agreement. It's literally copy and paste basically from where we came before.
Right. I know. I've picked up over the years. I will say my background's a little different from Scott. We worked on the same team. Scott did the everyday. I'm the one who created all those documents. So I created literally the speeches and all of the documents and graphics and all that stuff for them, and then later became an actual agent. So I kind of learned it backwards, but it's the same info. We both.
And 2, if you ever did do a buyer consult, which I think they're beneficial. They do go a long way. Those documents we ever get, anytime I ever extra signatures, it's always after I give a presentation.
Correct.
So I just gave my value proposition to them. Just like, listen, like I've given you my value of what I'm going to do, my knowledge of the market, what I'm going to do for you. And then I'm like, oh, hey, here's these last few documents I need you to sign, which customer information form, what we all need to sign, and the buyer rep agreement. And usually, like I said, of the hundreds and hundreds of consultations that I've done, I've got pushback maybe on 5. But end of the day, they end up signing anyway.
So do you want to run through that? Do you want to run through like your conversations to set that appointment, or just once you're actually face to face and kind of run through so people know what that even sounds like?
Let me, and if anybody has questions, please let them fly. But I also want to piggyback on kind of what Grant said in the beginning with what our company allows us to do is that listings bring buyers. So the reasons why you'll ever hear Grant or I say like, hey, like, it doesn't work for everybody. And if you can do it and you want to do it, go pay for the Zillow leads, the Realtor.com lead. But end of the day, if you kind of learn the scripts and role play those scripts on how to convert a sign call from your listings, every listing, technically, I think the math was on it should bring you at least 5 buyer conversations from each listing you have. So that how you translate that is instead of somebody calling you, hey, I'm calling about 123 Main Street. Can you give me the price? Don't ever give them the price right away. Build up a rapport with that person, because once you give them the price, you've given them what they wanted and they don't need you anymore. So those conversations started in, oh, it's a great home. Everyone's calling about that property. Are you in the market to purchase? Oh, of course I am in the market to purchase. I'm calling about your house. What's the price? Okay, well, let me go look it up for you. And you start asking these buyer questions to kind of see really what they're looking for. So that end of the day, not only can you convert them on the house that you're selling, you're like, okay, well, if you don't like this home that I'm selling, I can help you with other homes. That starts a buyer conversation. That starts a buyer lead. Instead of giving them the price, if anything I can tell y'all today is never give somebody the price of the home right away, ever. Because once you give that to them, you're done. They don't need you anymore. So kind of work around that to convert them, see what they want. And on top of that, they might not know what we do as a listing company. So tell them what we do as a company, because they probably need to sell a home. And just, hey, just out of curiosity, this home doesn't work for you. If you plan on looking to sell a house, this is what our company provides and what we do. Are you interested in our learning more about us? That opens up another conversation. So all these things can be achieved without just giving them what they want when they call for, if that makes sense to everyone. But yeah, that back in the day, our conversations were trying to convert them to get pre-approved for a loan. From them getting pre-approved for a loan turned into let's set up a buyer consultation prior to go looking at houses. Then that conversation really stayed in, and I'll let Ashley take this over because I haven't done it in forever, but basically going by, tell me what you want, tell me what you need in the house. And it was a page by page aspect of it. So we can really break it down into the day. Okay, you need this, 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 and this. Let's go see these 3 houses so we can buy it instead of going to look at 10, 15.
Basically, yeah.
It's time is of the essence. It's literally you doing this 1 hour meeting to stop you from having to go run around with you like with a chicken with their head cut off, basically.
I think a big part of this is just like our listing presentation is designed to tell people the truth about real estate. I feel like there's a lot of buyers out there, especially first-time home buyers. They have no idea what to expect. A lot of them are sitting there watching HGTV to figure out what realtors do. And I think it's important to tell them the reality of things. Just look, I might see listings 15 minutes faster than you, maybe. And odds are I'm going to be working with a client in that 15 minutes. You're going to find data just as fast as I can find it. Now, look, if you have your own site, like I know Ashley does, all the franchise owners do, we have KV Core coming where everybody's going to have their own site. Okay, so definitely you want to tell them, hey, download my app as soon as KV Core comes out with that. Hey, go to my site and set up a saved search, because our site is going to keep up with that client for you. Okay, believe it or not, it's to the point where a lot of these KV Core sites, if they favorite a listing, the KV Core will actually text them and say, hey, we found this listing. See if you like it. To make them believe, oh, yes, we're searching our website just like you are to send you listings. But that's not the real value of an agent. The real value of an agent is saying, hey, this is what I am. You're bringing me in for market knowledge. You want to be loyal to me, and it's not because I have all the listings and you can't see them. But even for them that thinks that there's off-market properties out there, well, who's probably going to have the off-market properties? The agent's listing the most houses. The company listing the most houses per agent is probably going to have more off-market properties. So that is another thing you can sell, especially in a really low inventory market like this. I think all these things, just telling people, look, this is how the process works.
Yeah,
this
and
quality loyalty is huge.
don't ever look. I've learned the hard way. Don't ever assume a buyer knows what they're talking about, and vice versa. Because meaning, the public doesn't understand. Like, I think we think that the public knows more than what they do. They don't. Meaning, they don't know what a listing agent is. They don't know what a buyer's agent is. They just know, I see house, I want to buy house, I call a random person. So part of that buyer consultation as well is giving them knowledge of saying, look, don't call that listing agent who already, and I used to say this, their loyalty is the person who they signed a contract with to sell their house. Their main goal is to that person. Now, legally, if they work with you, they have to be honest and work both sides. But at the end of the day, their loyalty is to that listing they sign, they get it sold. So using me to help you buy that house, I have your benefits in mind. So they don't know that. They think they're just going to, and that's why people just call signs and randomly just get in houses, because they don't understand that they can use a buyer's agent or a buyer's agent. And technically we aren't free, but they don't owe us anything for our services until we sell their house and get what they want. So never assume that everyone knows how real estate works, because even the veterans of the world of selling and buying houses, they still don't know how real estate works. Always
forget it. Educate them. Yeah, most people go out moving every 7 years. For those of you who call for sale by owners or reach out to for sale by owners, that's a great window into understanding just how much the public doesn't understand the process, because your average for sale by owner thinks that they're going to put it on Zillow, hold an open house, and get 150 people to show up, and they're going to be sifting through 20 offers. That's what they think is going to happen. That's why I tell a lot of people, hey, the best time to call for sale by owner is after that weekend open house where nobody showed up except for real estate agents, and they wonder why their house didn't sell. They don't understand the process. First-time buyers for damn sure don't understand the process, and you have to educate them. You have to tell them, hey, this is how the process works. You're going to be looking for stuff just like I'm looking for stuff. When you see something, you call me, you text me, we make an appointment, and we go. Okay.
And honesty and transparency with buyers, my buyer business changed a lot. Like, it completely flipped on its head once I started having conversations with buyers, like you would have a conversation with the seller. Meaning, and let me explain that. I was afraid to say what I needed to say as a buyer's agent because I was scared of them going to find a yes somewhere else. Until I realized I need to flip that, and they're hiring me for a reason to get them what they want. I need to be more honest and blunt with them. And that flipped my buyer business upside down in a good way, because I was able to control my time and not waste time just running around listening to them, whatever they want. When they're like, hey, I want to be at 400,000, but we want to see 500,000 houses. Like there's a time with us where we struggle to have that tough conversation with that buyer, and we'll just go do it and roll our eyes and grunt, but we just wasted time. Until I realized, you know what, I'm going to have that conversation. Remember that time you said you wanted a 400,000 house and you wanted this, and that? What are we doing looking at 5? So you put it back on them, asking the question of what are we doing this, and why we're doing it, and it flips them. So kind of go to for us by owner script too, is like, we're now being honest with them. Don't sugarcoat anything. Be like, look, I'm here on your same team. You want to save money selling your home. If I can do this for you, wouldn't it be in your benefit to hire me to do it for you and not waste time? So it's more, the long story short of this is, be transparent and upfront with these people, and don't be afraid to say no. In the worlds of they're going to go find a yes anyway, that's fine. If they're going to go find that yes, let them. You don't want them to be your client anyway, but be open to them. Treat them like it's a business transaction with a little more love. And it will go a long way. Because I think part of too, Seth, and tell me if I'm wrong, was not only I guess this whole point of this meeting was to how to gain buyer business and also how to keep buyer business.
Because we have so many kids there.
Is that kind of the idea of this Google Meet too?
Yeah, well, There you go. Thanks, Seth.
Yeah, and how to work them, like during.
So
I mean, I've got buyers that I've been working with for 6 months plus, and they're just because nothing's in the market. It's like, how do you keep them engaged? And I've never actually had that first sit down buyer consultation to set expectations, and it's just, how do like, I guess you're explaining how you set those expectations, and that goes a long way. It's the same thing for a listing. We set expectations with a listing presentation. That way a seller knows, okay, if it's not moving, then it's probably one of these three things, because it's out there on every website and that's what people sell. It's not because I didn't post an open house. It's not because just I'm not working hard enough to sell it, So that's kind of the whole idea, is what makes our life easier and helps us convert more buyers, because listing at 1% and then picking up buyers at 2 to 3. If you can pick up 2 to 6 buyers a year and convert them, I mean, dude, that changes the year for us. So that kind of thing just, I think it can really benefit everybody. And maybe we don't focus enough on it.
Okay. Ashley, what are you about to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was just gonna kind of, I guess, dive into those conversations. So for me, it is very rare that I ever take a buyer out or go show property without having a consult first. Like it almost never happens. Occasionally, but almost never. And so my business mostly comes from Sphere or past client referrals. And those conversations are different from just like a cold call buyer, essentially. I'm not cold calling, but like a random person who doesn't know me or has no connection to me that just reaches out through Facebook. Those actual phone conversations are different. Sorry, I got phone calls coming in. But regardless of who it is, I'm always trying to sit down with them. So the first, I guess, bit of that conversation is, you're looking for a house. Like, are you already pre-approved? Are you working with a lender? If not, do you need me to connect you with like a great local one and get that ball rolling? Because that is the first step. Once they do that, and they have to do that for me to meet with them, because if they don't, then they're not serious and they're wasting my time. And I'm okay not pursuing that business because my time is valuable to me. So you have to kind of set your own boundaries in your own business, and you're willing to work or not work or chase based on your own time. And I can't really set that for you, but for me, that's how it works. So if they don't take the time to go get pre-approved, or at least have a conversation with the lender where a lender can then tell me, yes, they're 30 days out or they're 6 months out, then I'm not really chasing them at the moment. So even if they're 6 months out, I will still sit down with them and have a consult on the front end because they did the work. So that conversation is basically, okay, great. You talked to the lender. They said you're however long out. Let's sit down for 30 to 45 minutes because I want to explain the process to you from start to finish, find out what you're looking for in a home, and then me explain to you how much it's going to cost you. And that right there, they'll do it. They'll set an appointment with you. You pick a time, a date, whatever, you go do it. I typically do this in a coffee house because I don't have an office that I bring people to. So wherever you're comfortable and you want to do that, go do that. That conversation, I truly try and keep it short and sweet, but give them all the info that they need so that I can get on with my life. But then they've met me at least face to face, and it's in a safe space, right? Because I don't show random strangers houses that I've never met. I just don't do that. So for me, like, again, like 4 or 5 pages. And Scott, interject, Grant, interject whenever you want to. I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
I think the lender aspect is something that doesn't get stated enough. I know Scott has, a small handful of lenders that he really likes. Ashley's really got one that she really likes. Here's the thing. I don't know if limiting yourself to necessarily one is best, but there's nothing wrong with it. But the main thing is, whenever I was working with a lot of buyers, I would push buyers to the lender that I wanted them to go. I would heavily push them. And the problem is, you start working in higher price points, and you'll get people that, they are very affluent, and they don't want to be bothered with getting pre-approved. They don't want to be bothered with other things. But there's ways you can do it. Like I would push people to my lender of choice. And if they say, well, I've already got a lender I'm working with, I would test that a little bit to say, look, when banks compete, you win. Do you want to get another opinion? Anytime somebody's been competing for a rate, I've always seen the rate get a lot better. And then I've had some people just snap back and say, no, my brother's a lender, my best friend's a lender. And then you just got to let it go. But the whole thing is having a lender that you have a tight relationship with will keep you deals. There is going to be times where they are going to speak to that lender and not speak to you. And I've had deals that were saved because that lender's like, hang on, when did you see this? Grant didn't tell me you were going to see this. Oh, we just called the son. You really don't want to do this. You want to work with Grant. Grant's awesome. You want to work with Grant. There's benefits to working with Grant. Trust me, you want to stay with Grant. A solid lender will make sure you keep deals that you would have lost. You know, but if you're working with a lender that you don't have a relationship with, they are just as likely to send that deal to the agent that they want to get a relationship with, and that person might not be you or to their favorite realtor. I mean, just assume that you're swimming with sharks in this business.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What you got, Jordan?
Hey guys, when it comes to the lender process, so this might sound super funny, but I'm really picky about who I let handle my clients because I handle my clients very, very diligently. And I like to have a lender who handles them in the same way. So when it comes to meeting a new lender, I literally sit them down and like almost interview them and tell them my expectations for them. And they kind of tell me the same thing. I am one of those people. I have one lender that I specifically really love because she communicates in the same way that I do, which is I'm somewhat of an over communicator, but I also believe in that for transparency. I don't like anyone to be blindsided by anything. But I'm very picky in that aspect because I also set it up like when I meet a new person that my lender is a part of my team. So it's also like it's kind of a one-stop all-inclusive shop. And that person, I think that really builds an aspect of trust for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sash. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I agree with that because I work the same way and I tend to give like overshare information. However, I do think you need a variety because what you will find is that your lender does not always have the product that matches everybody. So I have my main girl and I always start there. And if she can't do it, then send them to my secondary lender, who is more of a mortgage broker, but has a large variety of products available to him and can sometimes do lower credit or just non-traditional and definitely investment stuff where my main girl cannot. And then I have another person that I use exclusively for mobile home stuff. So you need kind of an arsenal to hit all of the things. And those conversations you have on the front end will kind of tell you where you need to send them first, if that makes sense.
And having lenders that are trying to get your business.
Yeah.
A lot of lenders that will try. I mean, for our big producers, I guarantee you they're getting hit up at least once a week from some lender saying, hey, let's get a coffee, let's go to lunch, something like that. Until you have a stable of lenders that are the qualities you're looking for in a lender is somebody who's not going to drop the ball because that reflects on you. You send somebody to them and then they screw up. That's bad. But if they screw up and they don't make it right, that's way worse. Okay, so somebody who's responsible, somebody who's an adult, somebody's going to do their job well and own it when they don't. Preferably somebody who's networked. Okay, so like if your lender lives in the nicest neighborhood in town and all their friends are $1 million homes, it might not be a bad idea to have a relationship with that lender. And that might not be a bad idea to have that lender think, oh man, I can count this as an agent who's going to send me 10 deals a year. Something like that. Just, knowing that. But most importantly, have lenders that are loyal to you.
Yes. And this is in Jordan, I'm going to kind of answer I'm going to kind of piggyback on your statement as well. So unfortunately, where I was previously, my average sales price is much less than what I am right now. So the amount of buyers that I was working with in the past was a lot of first-time home buyers who needed my resources and knowledge. Quickly, once I switched over to the 1%, and I was fortunately to raise my sales price tremendously, I was working with a different set of buyers who were more savvy in the business. So when I first tried to kind of guide those buyers into my direction of a lender, I was getting a lot more pushback. So I analyzed that and said, okay, I need to reword how I talk to these buyers with these lenders because they are more savvy. They know what they're doing. They're looking at me like, hey, man, I know I got it. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to push back in a way, but I still guided them like, hey, more of like what Grant said. Hey, I understand. that you have your guy, but it never hurts to go have a conversation with somebody else to see what they can do for you. Because even though your brother-in-law is your lender, if somebody else can get you a better deal, until your brother-in-law pays a difference in mortgage, wouldn't you rather use the other guy that's going to save you money? And they kind of always usually laugh at that and like, yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Let me have a conversation. So it's always kind of me personally. I work the conversation and kind of see what kind of lender they need or work with. But if they push back pretty quickly, like they got a guy they trust and they know what they're doing, I'll let it usually fly. That's just my opinion on that.
Jordan, here's the thing, Jordan, and for those of you who don't know, Jordan and her husband own Green Street in Des Moines, Iowa, and they've been doing great. Brought on some great agents. They're growing. So here's the thing, Jordan, and I'm not telling you you're wrong, but let me play devil's advocate against what you're saying for just a second here, Jordan. So let's say you and Ben both have your favorites, okay? And that's who you're only going to be loyal to, or that's who you're going to try to be loyal to. I know you're not saying that in chat. I'm reading what you said in chat. So, you're telling me you have backups and things like that. The whole point is where we found as a broker unlocked a whole new level of growth was when we stopped being just, we only use this title company, we only use this lender, because now it's like open season. Now it's like whenever you start doing a lot of deals and your agents are really productive, it's like you're the most beautiful human being in the world and you just walked into a bar. It's like everybody wants to talk to you, everybody wants to meet you, and everybody wants to have a relationship with you. Ooh, I've got this agent that I think will be great for you and all these things. But if they feel like you're shut down to that, then it's basically you and your lender and your title company against the world. But when they feel like it's open season, then it's, you get a lot more opportunities to collaborate. And as a broker, I think you have to look at that a little bit differently than just as a top producer. Does that make sense, Scott?
Yes. And it just kind of goes to show you that you have different resources, and they trust you to like, hey, I believe in what you said. So it's always good. But long story short, for me personally, is it's a client by client basis, and how I can talk with them and not talk to them. There's some where I just know what they're going to do by themselves, and that's fine. They're repeat clients. I don't need to push it. But if there's some who has an opening for some guidance, I'm going to give it, and not be scared to give it. Because at the end of the day, they can just tell me no and just use the guy they want to use anyway. But it's always good to have a conversation, because going back to what Jordan, Ashley, and Grant says is having that trust factor with that lender who is really, really the most important person in this whole buyer transaction. Because if they can't get the job done, no one's closing. Right. So trusting them to know that, hey, I'm giving you this person, don't mess it up, and get me to the closing table is highly important.
Yep. Any questions? Who's had a buyer problem recently? Anybody who's dealing with an issue that they want to share? Anybody? No.
Let it fly. I think me, Ashley, even Matt, David, we've seen problems.
We'll take anything at this point. Give us good news, give us bad news. I know Seth had a couple where he lost 2 or 3 buyers.
Oh, that's what I wanted to say. In some slow times that we have right now, this is kind of a weekly thing that I can give advice to for people to kind of set things up. Analyze your pipeline right now, and see what you have. Ashley mentioned that we got a 6-month buyer, a 8-month buyer, a 3-month buyer. We're gonna put them in categories of A, B, and C buyers, right? So you can do this with listings as well. Your pipeline, you kind of go down your pipeline and have that conversation of, and this is how you can do something weekly to stay in touch with them and not lose people. You have your A buyers, because A buyers is one to buy yesterday, right? You need to be in touch with them daily. If they're not under contract, they need to be in your top of your mind all the time, every time. Those are the ones that literally want to buy yesterday. Your B buyers are probably, they can buy tomorrow, but they can also buy in 2 months. They can buy in 3 months, but they can go look at a house that just popped up and want to buy it right now. So those are the ones that you need to talk to weekly in a way. Be on top of mind, a text message saying hi, doing something. And then you have your C buyers who, like Ashley mentioned, you're 6 months out, you're 3 months out. They're waiting for a credit to hit. They're ready to get pre-approved. They're ready to buy, but they're 6 months out. Well, sometimes in real estate world, out of sight, out of mind, if somebody's not helping me right now, I'm going to forget about them, which then we all struggle with follow-up. So that's 6 month. If you have your pipeline sheet in front of you, you know that, okay, I got a 6 month buyer. I might reach out to them every 2 weeks. I might just touch base with them, but it's an alert and put it in your calendar. Hey, touch base with this person. So when the time does hit, that 6 month can pop up like that. And you don't realize it, but they're not going to just use someone else because you didn't touch base with them until your last dentist appointment, right? So those are little things that you can put in a category that you have in front of your mind to say, I need to reach out in front of all these people, which also gives you something to do weekly as a form of lead generation. Because every time you talk to these people, just kind of tell them how you doing, and they look, hey, if you always ask for referrals. So those are opportunities that you have to have conversations that you might have never done before. So that's my little advice to give.
Scott and Ashley and anybody else who wants to chime in, I put in chat earlier our needs. Here's what we need. We just like our listing presentation video, I think we could use a very professional video to send to buyers. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Just something that you can kind of prep them for. Okay. Prep them hopefully for an in-person meeting, but something that'll serve even if you never do that in person, but prep them for that. I think we need a training video on how to speak to buyers, the main points you need to hit, all those things when it comes to dealing with buyers. Everybody agree with that? Yes. Yep. Okay. I think we need a short document for buyer needs and wants, kind of understanding what they need, how to create the search for them and all that stuff, how to keep tabs of all that stuff. Everybody pretty much agree with that?
Yeah, like practices, yeah.
And then fourth, and this might be the only one that might be a little bit controversial. I don't know why, but I think we need a loyalty agreement for our clients and agents. And I think what this is like, this is what you should expect from me, and this is what I expect from you. Like, you should be able to expect that you're going to get me on a call, or if you text me, I'm going to respond. Like, I'm going to communicate readily with you all the time. I'm going to make every effort to be available to show houses. And if I'm not available, I will find a colleague at my office who can help. You know, like, I'm going to be working on your schedule if at all possible. However, you know, with that comes the understanding that I am your go-to for all information. You're relying on me. You're calling me. You're not calling signs. Like, just a pleasant way of putting, hey, this is what you should expect from me. And it's a pretty high bar that I'm setting for myself. But if I meet this bar, this is what I expect from you. Is that fair?
Yes.
It's like a little one pager. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else that people think we need? Any other questions, concerns, thoughts, whatever? Do y'all think this should be a graphic video, kind of like our buyer's agent video, or should it be like the listing presentation video? I think it should, or should we actually have? I don't think it should be a person from the camera talking. I think it should be like I think it should be like a more modern feel. Like, for those of you who use our listing presentation video and buyer rep video, everybody agree with that?
I did just check, Grant, in the templates under purchase on .loop, in the hub .loop, there is a buyer rep agreement on there.
Yeah, it's a little different. I read it. Mine is, I think, totally opposite, but it's got good content in it. They're just different.
Yeah, I think the main thing to understand is I don't want the buyer rep agreement to feel like a threat, because I'm never going to sue anybody.
Correct.
What I want people to understand, hey, I'm appealing to your principles, your honesty, and your loyalty. You know,
yes. The only thing in those buyer rep agreements that I never did this, there's a spot to where you put a commission on there. I always put 0 on there, because I told them, like, I trust you that you're going to use me, and I'm never going to make you pay me in a way. The only thing I said, like Ashley mentioned, the only thing that ever comes up with a payment issue would be if it's a for sale by owner, that we have to negotiate a commission. That's the only unfortunate thing. But it said I said those exact words that Ashley said. If you don't use me, I'll try and help you, but please refer everyone that you can refer to me.
right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I agree. Because you're just looking for the silver lining at that point. It's like you've done all the hard work. You know what I mean? Try to make anything off of it, but just try to invest in your future.
Correct.
So, do we want to actually go through a consult, or do we want to do a totally separate video training on that? Like, I didn't know what the format for this was.
Yeah, I mean, are you saying like you want to do a consult for them and kind of show you what that looks like, Ashley?
I'm asking if that was the intention of this, and like, do we want to do that? Yes.
I think we should. If you're open to it, I think that would be awesome. But I wanted to lay out. Here's the thing. I think it's important to understand. I think that's best practices is sit down and do the buyer consult. But my thing is, if I can build as good of a system as I can, then even if somebody doesn't have the buyer consult, we're more likely to keep this person in-house as long as that we're at least got the video in front of them and we've communicated to them in the right way, as opposed to just saying, oh, okay, well, I'm your buyer's agent. Let me know when you find something. I think that's where we're having problems. And so I want to head that off as much as possible, assuming that that buyer meeting won't happen, but build it hoping that it does, and have a game plan as if it does, but just in case it doesn't, it works. Does that make sense?
I guess my only advice in addition to that would be get as much information as you can from that potential client. Like, you need to have a really in-depth understanding of what it is they're looking for, and then question those answers. So if they're like, we need a 3-bedroom, or we really need a 4th bedroom, well, why do you need that 4th bedroom? Like, if they only have 2 kids, and you may not know this because maybe they need an office space. Okay, well, does it have to be an actual enclosed office, or could it be like a foyer that you could make an office? Like, you need to have not that that's a searchable term on the MLS anyway, but you have to kind of dig deep into what it is they're looking for, and then where they're willing to compromise. So we know budget is fixed. Outside of that, like, are you willing to go further than your ideal location from your job to get the extra square footage that you need, or that kitchen that you wanted, or the backyard, blah, blah, blah? Or do you lose that because you have to stay within 5 minutes from your job, or whatever it is? And that kind of helps you dial down without sending them 50 properties in their search. Like, you don't want to send them that many, because then they're going to want to see that many. If you can really tailor it to their wants, it saves you loads of time. And then sometimes it just doesn't exist because we don't have a lot of inventory right now. So that's part of your conversation. Like, this may take a little while to find, but luckily I list a shit ton of houses. So I have, like, in my network of agents who also list a ton of houses, can find you something off market. And then y'all, sometimes you have to like do your job and actually go find this, shake the damn tree, go look in Facebook, like, those other people are trying to sell for sale by owner. Like, you have to message them and
Go
find.
to Zillow. Go to Zillow and look around at for sale by owners.
Those questions that Ashley's asking as well, that allows you, what they don't realize, they're giving you permission to turn that back on them.
Yeah.
Meaning, so if let's say we're in that perfect house, and they're like, oh, I don't know, I get to go back to that sheet that they just wrote down and said, well, your must needs in a home was this, and that. Does this house have every single one of those? And when they say yes, I'm like, then what are we waiting for?
Correct.
So it allows you to have that conversation with them, is to turn it back on them, to be like, okay, you said you wanted this as criteria, because if your criteria has changed, we got to re-talk about things.
Right.
So they're giving you open permission to have those conversations with them, instead of just being like, okay, what house you want to go see next?
Yeah,
I don't want to go see houses anymore.
I think what Ashley's doing now is something that I've never done, and I've probably lost dozens of buyers over the years because of it. But what I would say is, I think in a perfect world, what Ashley's talking about right now, people are meeting face to face in a coffee shop or wherever and having this conversation, or you're even doing it when you list someone's house. You will wind up in this business listing a lot of total strangers' houses. And really the whole point of the business model to some degree is to use the listings to generate the fast buyer. And so whenever, I can tell you at every listing presentation, I would ask them, just be like, okay, so hang on. So we're selling, this is what we're doing. Well, where are you going? And then they tell me, oh, well, we're blending families. We need a bigger house. Oh, okay. Well, look, I'm going to go ahead and get photos set up and everything else, but I'm also going to create a search for you. This was the extent of my interview with a buyer. Was I would tell them, look, I'm going to create a search for you. This is going to send you everything that pops up on the market immediately. When it does, if there's any interest, all you got to do is say, hey, I like this one. Dig up this information. Or, hey, I like this one. Are you available Saturday at 10 o'clock? And, here's the thing. That's my job. And I would always use these words to them. My job, if I'm helping you find a house, is to be available to you. Okay, now look, I might need 24 hours notice, maybe a little more, preferably, but my job is to do that. So you're not, I would always use this term, you are not bothering me by me doing my job. You're not a bother saying, oh, I found this house, I want to go see it. That's a good thing for me. That's not bothering me. Okay, so I would always really instill that in them. But that was the extent of my buyer meetings, is I would just tell them, look, this is how it works. Let me know what you see that you like. I'll let you know vice versa. And we'll just go see stuff until we find the right thing. I mean, it's not hard, but I think the way Ashley does it is definitely more thorough. And I think it's a better way of doing it. I think that at least needs to happen when you're listing somebody's house, or it needs to happen on the phone. At the very least, fill it out on the phone with them. Do one of these. Google Meet is absolutely free. Okay, invite them into a Google Meet. Just sit here and talk to them face to face. Okay, and literally be writing it down. Ooh, okay, here's what you want. Here's what you want. Here's what you want. And, make them feel like you're engaged in the process and explain how the process works. We'll do that with a video and other things, but we'll definitely need a training video on how to have that meeting.
Actually, I'm curious. Are you actually like doing a questionnaire with them, or like taking notes, or are you taking mental notes, or
Both. And so when I sit down with them, like my first sheet, which I can upload, it's really more informational for me. So yes, it's like getting all their general, because typically I'm meeting with both parties if it's a both party situation. If not, and it's just one person can be there, that's fine too. They'll give me all the info. And then sometimes you're having to have those again when you're in houses because they missed the first meeting, just to kind of remind them of things. But yeah, it's capturing all of their info. So their name, email, phone number, their spouse's stuff, where they're at now,
Right.
renting, are they selling, like what's their timeline legit in their mind. And then you also have like from the lender what their timeline is, but what do they anticipate like having to be in a house by whatever day. And then super dive deep into those questions of, okay, what are you looking for? Like, what is that? How many bedrooms? How many baths? Do you have any idea of square footage, like minimum square footage that you want? Do you want a raised house? Do you want a slab house? Do you want to be in a neighborhood? Do you not want an HOA? Do you want to be by a school? Sometimes it's easier to work backwards. Like, what are the things that you absolutely do not want? Okay, I don't want to have a house that's that needs like renovations. Like I want turnkey, or I don't want an open floor plan, or I don't want an upstairs. Like if it's an upstairs, I have to have the master on the bottom level. Like as many questions as you can ask. Sometimes it's dumb, and like, do you want a yard with a fence? Like things that don't necessarily matter, that we could coach them through the right house and like tell them that they could just buy it, like build a fence later. But I think it helps them feel engaged, like you actually care, because you're taking the time to ask them all these questions that they never thought of before. Some of that's not searchable, and you can explain that too. Like, okay, I realize these are all the things that you want. The MLS doesn't really let me filter that way, so you're going to kind of see some things that you've already kind of told me that you didn't want, but we'll weed those out as we go. So you kind of make them aware that you're aware, even though you're not like gonna tailor pick through how, at least I'm not. I know you could do that, but I'm not doing that. I'm just putting them on a blanket general criteria search for 5 points that I can filter in the MLS, and then I'm sending them that bulk of info.
One of the things that I would focus on is I would really press them on what is more important, the location.
Yes. Right.
One of the biggest questions, what's more important, the location of the house? Because look, like me, you could give me a freaking shed on a golf course and I'm happy. But the wife might be different, and the spouse sometimes rules. And so you ask that question and understand that these things, it's an initial consult, but it can very quickly change.
Yeah.
You could go out one weekend and they could realize, well, yeah, I can buy these crappy older houses in Mandeville where we are, for example, or I could agree to drive 15 more minutes every day and I get a big yard and a new house.
Yeah.
For a similar
Correct. So it's a triangle method. I learned that one of these old Keller Williams training things, which really helped, is it's 3 things. It's location, condition, and price. I've always said I can give you 2 out of 3. Can't give you 3
Right.
or 3. 3 or 3 is a unicorn. So of those 3, which one's the deal breaker and the most important? So then we'll flip it on the triangle. Like if you tell me price is the most important and location and condition didn't matter as much, so we're going to focus on price, and you can't go over your pre-approval level. You can't do any of that. And vice versa, conditional location. Whereas if you tell me, I've used this before, like, oh, I need to be 5 minutes from the causeway. Well, what if your dream home is 15 minutes from the causeway? You got to stop from living in your dream home and driving up to your driveway and smiling? Like, you're right. All right.
Just understand the initial buyer consult is very likely going to change after you've shown them houses for the first time. I had some clients come in from San Francisco. Okay. They sold a house they inherited from their family for a ton of money in San Francisco. And they came over and what they said is well, we kind of figured we would find like a new house about 4,000 square feet on 5 acres, by the bridge, the causeway for like 900. And I'm like, lady, you can't find 5 acres for 900.
Right.
Much less a brand new 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house on it. But, the phone conversation that we had when they're in San Francisco, like they assume that they're moving in with the Beverly Hillbillies and land is free. Like they thought that this was like the great Oklahoma land rush of the 1800s that they were embarking on. It's not. It's different. And so your first consult, whenever you show them 5 things that absolutely meets their criteria, and then they tell you, oh, we don't like any of these 5 things. We don't like any of these 5 houses. Well, why? Well, because they're exactly what we want, but they're too dated. Okay, so you're willing to go a little further out.
And
yeah, I think that's big.
I'll interject a second and just say, Seth, in that conversation, you already know their budget. And so when they're like rattling off all this stuff that they want, and sometimes that just doesn't exist in that price point, like that, they're to get that, what they're wanting for that price point. That is like your come to Jesus moment to kind of explain that. Like, okay, I appreciate that, but the reality is that literally does not exist in this market right now. Like it just doesn't happen. So for that price, we're going to have to be in blank area. Like you're not going to be able to buy it here. Or if you do, you're not getting that 4th bedroom with that office. You might get barely a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that might be like 1,500 square feet. That's it. And they kind of have to decide whether they're okay with that or not, if they're wanting to be certain schools or whatever it is. But you've told them on the front end, and then the properties that you send are going to match that. And so sometimes I'll set them up on 2 searches. I'll, give them one that's exactly what they want. And then I'll open it up and send them a second one that is like, okay, but here are all your other options for the same price elsewhere. And then they can kind of choose what location they want to end up at, because they got options at that point.
And look, a little cheap thing that I would do with that is whenever somebody says, oh, I'm looking in this area only from 350 to 400, I would immediately go and create them a search in twice as big of an area from 325 to 425.
Correct.
And the reason is because they're telling me, ooh, I want specifically this, and this, as if it exists.
Right.
Okay. And I'm on, and so I tell them, and I would tell them straight up, I'm like, you give me your parameters and I'm going to move them out just a little bit. And I would explain it by saying, look, there might be a gem of a house that's a little bit further out, but it's dirt cheap and it's just a great buy and you want it. Then again, there might be a house that, you say 400 is your cap, but they're way overpriced at 425 and we can get it over 400. Okay. You want to see that house. Okay. And so the whole thing is like, look, nobody ever got frustrated because they had too many options. It's always when they don't have enough.
Yeah. I don't know. You got a checklist of things you want to do, whether we have like a buyer interview template to go through.
That's
to where, it reminds us of what questions to ask. We can make notes. And I like to, it does engage that buyer more to where, they're thinking, oh, shoot, I didn't really think about that. You get locations of, where they're living now, where they're working. So you can kind of keep that in mind while you're in it. It just makes them think that it's a more personal experience with you and you really have their best interests personal, in mind versus just, okay, we're just going to look in this city for this price range.
The fun part of them is houses. So you have to peel the curtain and be like, okay, now how'd your brain work? Because it's not just about pretty houses. There's things that matter.
It's educating them too on what a lot of people just don't really know what they want. They just want a house, especially these first time home buyers. And and even to educate on, okay, if you're buying your first time house, it's probably in your forever home. So we might need to think more price conscious instead of getting into a 5 offer bid, and going over asking, because you might need to sell it in 3 years.
Right. And I like meeting them face to face, but yes, countless times I've had these just over the phone because they're a nurse and they work weird hours or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a little time with them, whether it's just a phone conversation or face to face, to kind of dial down those key points that matter to them, truly goes a long way in showing them property and not wasting weeks or months showing countless homes for them to figure it out as they go. Or you think about it as they go, and then
Right.
engaging conversation, because sometimes they'll walk into something, they'll just be like, no. And then you have to figure out why. Like, okay, what about it do you not like? Like, literally ask them that and tell you, so that you make a mental note or put it in your phone or however to change their search to like filter that kind of stuff out if it's possible.
I thought you were going a different direction with that.
Go for it.
I thought you were going a direction of, they walk in and their immediate answer is no, but then the parents had to go and open the attic stairs and go running through the attic to make sure it's built right, because that's typically what I would get.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of parents. I try and discourage.
Scott has a story to tell.
Go ahead, Scott.
Big thing. My goodness. When you're talking to a first-time home buyer or somebody, had the conversation, are you the only decision maker in buying a home?
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, hey, what do you mean? I'm like, do you have a husband, a fiance, a boyfriend, a partner, a parent?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to suggest anytime we see a house, they have to come.
Correct.
We're not going to see a house on a Monday and have to wait till Sunday for daddy to see this home, because the house isn't going to be there on Sunday.
Correct.
And look, when you realize, like a lot of times you will, they got rich people out there that give their kids $100,000 to buy a house for a wedding present. When you realize you're in one of those situations, understand that the person that you now need to get in your corner is no longer the buyer.
Correct.
It is the person providing the money, and you need to have a frank conversation with them. Introduce yourself. This is who I am. This is what I do. I'm going to take care of your kiddos. Okay. They are fine with me. I'm a freaking professional. Okay. And you can tell them, just like, look, I'm going through all these things with them to make sure they understand. Like, I wouldn't do the whole buyer consult with that helicopter parent. Okay. Because you don't want them deciding what their kids can buy, because then the kids aren't going to want it. And then you got a real mess on your hands. But
that's a whole other video dealing with parents.
Oh, look,
buyers. It's a whole other video.
I totally agree.
And look, you got to build your rapport with daddy and mommy. And trust me, I've had this comment come out of my mouth plenty of times when we're in a brand new home or 3-year-old home. It's beautiful. I always tell them, like, do you remember your first home?
Right.
Their face goes, yeah, it was real crappy. I'm like, yeah, stop knocking your kid's house.
Y'all want to hear I'll give you the cliff notes of a true story. The only time I ever had somebody sign a buyer rep agreement that I held them to was one of my best friends. And the reason I did it was because the exact situation we're talking about here, okay, dad was giving them money to put down on a house. I go show them properties. They love it. I go show it again. Dad's okay with it. But they asked me, what is the house worth? It was listed as excellent condition. And when I tell you there was literally dead animals inside of it and doors hanging off the walls and holes, like, this is not an excellent condition. And so then they asked me, they're like, well, so what is the house really worth? And I did comps as if it was an average condition. Okay. And we submitted an offer as if it was an average condition. Of course, that offer gets rejected. And then the dad goes and calls his realtor friend to submit a new offer. Because that realtor friend, who had never even been to the house, said, that's the problem. He lowballed them. Like, no, I didn't. The problem is you've never been to the house you're writing an offer on. And so the dad tried to cut me out and use his realtor friend. Okay. And the realtor friend called me and I said, bro, by all means, write the offer, but I have procuring cause and I'm getting the money. So I don't care. If you want to do the shady thing, do the shady thing. And then that house didn't work out. The son called me to show him a new house. And I told him that day, I said, look, I'm going to do it, but you have to sign a buyer rep agreement. I said, it's to protect me from your parents. Okay. Because I said, here's the thing. I have kids. I'm skipping Little League to come do this. Okay. Like, I'm valuing you, you value me. And he signed it. And then it happened again. And the dad put me in a group text and said, as far as I'm concerned, you're fired. Said, the only problem is you're not my client. You can't fire me. Only your son can. And he signed a legally binding agreement with me. So he can't fire me either. And that's when it got bad. But it was always cool between me and the son, the one who was actually buying the house. It was the crazy parents that was the problem. So understand that the best thing to do is to save off the crazy parent. And the main way to do that is to get in their good graces and make them trust you. But if you can't get there, decide if it's worth it. And that's when you have the kids sign a buyer rep agreement. Because parents will screw you. Trust me, 65-year-old people know everything. And if they don't, and if you don't know that, they will tell you they do. And I'm sorry, there's any 65-year-old people. So
yeah, Seth, I know you had a question about like long-term staying in contact with your people. I mean, I feel like personally, I could always improve there too. I don't really have any tips, and Scott may have some, other than I'm real intentional about my calendar. Like, I use my Google Calendar. It notifies me, so it works for me because I don't carry around paper. But I'm really good about putting time blocks in to touch up with those people, whoever they are, whatever they are, once a month, whatever it is. Whether I literally just go find a random property on the MLS and text it to them like, hey, have you seen this one? Just to engage a conversation again, or come across like a for sale by owner or whatever it is, or just like, hey, checking on y'all. Are you still like looking to buy a home by whenever it is? Go back to those previous conversations just to kind of stay top of mind, because if you're not, then you'll find someone else. Like, even if you've done all of this jazz, if their timeline for whatever reason, something comes up and they need to pause it, if you don't stay top of mind, they will use someone else. So you do have to stay connected, and that does take work. And that is probably the hardest part, is when buyers aren't ready right now to stay connected to them like long term.
And it helps you, it benefits you too, because you stay on top of mind. And then, but if you forget about them, and so 6 months goes by, and then you get a random text message or something that says, hey, I'm ready to go see houses. And you look at your phone like, I don't know who this person is.
Yeah.
It's like, now I got to go find out who this person is. Go back and like, oh, wait, great. They remembered me. That's the worst. That's a terrible feeling. So, yeah, it helps you stay on top of mind with them, so you're not shell shocked when they do contact you.
So let me tell y'all, because this is terrible, but I have a guy, I just got him under contract from 3 years ago. I had him saved in my phone as like a conversion lead, and that was like from a team I was on literally 3 years ago. And the lender and I thought it was a different buyer when my lender sent me like, hey, he's pre-approved, because I use my lender for that reason. She consistently follows up and touches base with these people, and then we'll kick it back in my lap. But when she sent me the name, I thought it was an entirely different person, like a contractor I had used at one of my houses like 6 months ago. And so I called him and I'm like, great, you're pre-approved. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, I have no idea. Obviously, this is the wrong person. And it was. And so it was just a giant mess. But anyway, he's under contract 3 years later, and I had no idea who the hell he was, but he remembered me, and through my lender partner, it came back in my lap, which is, I guess a whole nother topic of conversation. But yeah, it happens. I mean, we're human. I don't stay in touch with every single person like I should. I think I do a pretty good job, but I could always improve. And I got really no other tips unless anybody does that can share. But for me, what works is Google Calendar. When y'all have a CRM, once this rolls out with Grant and them, that will help for you to actually have a database, because those will have like automatic touches and reminders and things that you can set up, which I'm sure will be a whole best practice thing. But for now, if you don't have a system, use your calendar and just set yourself up for reminders. And then I'll give you like a bonus. If you work with renters, I always will put a calendar reminder 4 months out from when their lease expires to reach out to them and be like, hey, your lease is coming up in 4 months. Are you guys thinking, or are you plan to renew your lease so we can start looking, and then you can get them connected to a lender and get that rolling. Because that's lost business. If you're not doing that and you're not, I mean, you've already wasted your time showing them rentals, but use it to convert them to buyers. Like that is huge. And I do a decent amount of leases only for that, to convert them to buyers eventually. They will buy eventually. Sometimes you just have to coach them through credit score and stuff to get them there, but don't like lose that opportunity.
Yeah.
I would say too, and this is probably a topic that it's coming to fruition now because the market kind of has settled down, is that we can have opportunity with buyers and have a serious buyer conversation these days. But I don't know if it's this video or next video, but I want to let everyone know who is here and who watches the video that please reach out to me. My skill set wasn't as good as Ashley's was with the follow-up and the Google Calendar. I am everywhere, but what I was good at is not showing multiple houses when I didn't have to, and having conversations inside those houses and watching the light bulb go off in these people's mindset to write the contract and let's get it going. So that's a whole different topic. So if you're having trouble converting buyers when you're inside the house, reach out to me. We can role play it. I can give you tips of things that I've done that helped. So feel free to reach out on that.
Yeah.
As much as possible.
Anybody got anything else or questions they want to ask?
We're an hour in, guys. Anybody got anything else? Okay.
Doing pretty good. Hey, I was wondering, like, what do y'all do? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Curious, like, what do y'all do when y'all actually show a house? Like, do y'all go through y'all process of looking at the house? You just follow them around? Do you try things to them? You know, I guess these are things that like nobody really talks about. That
As Ashley stepped out, I can answer that question. I am a big believer of, depending on who the buyer is. If it's a first-time home buyer, you're going to get a little more. I'm going to interact with you a little bit more. If you're a middle-tier home buyer, which you haven't done in a while, I'll interact with you a little bit less. If you're a veteran buyer I'm pretty much there, open up the door and just waiting for you to let me to talk, I'm going to talk a lot less. But mainly it's going in. I'm going to tell them how big the home is, what the price of the house is, how many bedrooms, all that good stuff, and say, let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah.
The more I talk, the less I can listen to them and find my opportunity to go in and seal the deal.
Yeah.
I think you bring in a listing sheet from the MLS or anything to give them, or
I used to back in the day, but I don't have any paper anymore. So it's more like
what I would do, Seth.
it is.
Yeah, what I did, Seth, is I would just have a conversation with them. Sometimes you can feel like your client, you know what they want. Okay,
Right.
like I think it kind of give you those cues. But for pretty much all of them, I mean, what you don't want to do is you don't want to be standing there updating your Instagram and Twitter and TikTok while you're showing the house. Okay, but I don't really follow them around. Okay,
No.
like I would open the door for them and I would just say, look, guys, I don't feel like I'm here to find a house that I love for you to buy. I feel like I'm here helping you search for the right house for you to buy. I want you to experience it as you would experience it without me breathing over your shoulder. I will be standing here waiting on you when you have questions. You want?
Because I also said,
yell at
of
me,
all the buyers,
and I'm there.
of all the buyers that I've shown houses to, I can promise you 100% of the time, my buyer has never bought a home that a listing agent stayed to show.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
100%. They never bought that house that a listing agent was there to show me the house.
No, I totally agree. I think the overarching thing that we can take from all this is they need to understand we are there to assist them and answer their questions. And they need, throughout the process, they need to feel like we're watching it, we're paying attention, we're not controlling it, but we're watching it and paying attention. And we are absolutely there whenever they call us questions, anything, we are there and available to them. I think the biggest thing is knowing that we are going to communicate well. I think for somebody who doesn't answer the damn phone and doesn't respond to text messages, we could have this meeting 50 times and they're never going to get better. Just responding to calls, responding to text, and trying your best to make yourself available or have somebody help you out if somebody's got to get in a house short notice. Just that effort. Really, effort takes care of, I think, 70% of this.
Yeah.
The rest of it is systems.
And so I agree with both of them. I I don't like announce we're in the living room, now we're in the kitchen. Like I don't do any of that. I mostly hang out in the living room kitchen, but I'll just hit the high points. Like for right now, that's age of the roof. So I typically, back in the day, I did used to give them sheets. I don't really do that anymore unless it's like an out of town buyer and we're seeing a bunch and I've already printed it for like the order. But no, it's usually just up on my phone. I have the disclosures open and I'm telling them like the age of the roof, if there's flood insurance, what the flood insurance runs, and then any kind of like agent notes that would be important if their seller's looking to close by a certain date, just shit like that they would need to know. But other than that, I'm not really following them or really even paying that much attention to the house unless they have interest. If they have interest, then I will literally do like a once through just to see if there's anything that we need to know that would come up for inspections, like if it's growing in or anything, that would be problematic. If it's Mandeville, I will be honest, usually I'm opening cabinets to look for polybutylene because some people act like they don't know that exists, and it does, and it's real common for old houses in Mandeville. And I would rather have a conversation on the front end than go under contract and have to deal with it later. So that's the only thing I'm looking for.
And I'm going back to the less talking that I'm doing, the more listening I get to do, is because I'm literally waiting to hear when they start using possessive words while they're looking at the house. Because I'm trying to lock them in. I'm trying to, like, when I say, oh, look, my furniture could fit right here. And they start using, like, they're starting saying this is their home. I'm now locking in and be like, okay, this is the house.
Or
like, we don't need to go see another one.
Right. Like, or they're like, I love the house, but my furniture doesn't fit. I'm like, well, it's real easy to replace a sofa. Like, you can totally buy new furniture. That's not
new house, new TV. That's my rule. And they always laugh. So it's perfect.
Right. Right.
Cool. All right, guys. I literally have a call to be on in 60 seconds. So is everybody good? All right. I'm going to start working on 4 things. I'm gonna create a task for myself to do. I appreciate everybody showing up today. I'm stopping the recording now.
Bye, guys.
I really appreciate you guys, and I might need a little bit of input from you guys on this if you don't mind.
Thank you all.
Yep. Thanks, guys.